What's up, guys? Welcome back to Daniel Talks Football right here on YouTube. I am Daniel and we are back with another podcast. Haven't done a podcast in a couple of weeks, obviously doing videos in the run-up to the World Cup. We've got a podcast this week, though, just before the World Cup does start. Before we do get into the video, I need to ask you to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. The notification bell is key. We have 5 videos coming out on the channel this week, and as of recording, I'm not quite sure when they're all coming out. So please do hit the notification bell so you can stay notified of when they are. We've got the World Cup predictions coming out and quite a few videos on Chelsea as well. So make sure you do hit that bell so that you know when we upload. Also, like the video and go comment down below. What do you think of what we're going to say? And do you think Chelsea will get top 4? Because I've got something I'm going to tell you about later. We've got a guest on the line and I'm going to tell him later about how one of my friends before the season started said that Chelsea wouldn't get top 6. So we'll touch on that in a little bit. Also, could you please go over and follow the Instagram and the TikTok Daniel Talks Football on both. I mentioned the guest there and we'll move on to him now. He's a massive fan account over on Instagram. He's got an awful lot of followers and his name is Chelsea Blogs. How are you doing, mate?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. As I say, I'm good. Busy with the World Cup coming up. As I say, 5 videos out on the channel this week, which means I won't be stopping. But no, I'm good. Leicester are winning. I'm not coming on here to complain about Leicester for once, and that's always nice because we're not awful. So, high spirits, because the amount of times people have heard me this season complain on here, and I don't have to do it anymore, and that is lovely. So instead, we'll be complaining about Chelsea, because you are now the bad ones.
The tables have turned.
They have.
And now it's, I guess, our turn to complain.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you nicked our best defender for 70 million, and now you're the ones complaining about bad form. I don't want to say it's karma, but, you know. We're going to touch on Chelsea a lot later on in the podcast, though. Right, let's get into the first game. Manchester City versus Brentford. Brentford absolutely shocked the Manchester side here, winning the game 2-1 with a 98th minute Ivan Toney goal. Do you think Toney should have been in the England squad?
I think, yeah, like 100% he should have been in the England squad, especially since, he had the whole call-up right before, the international break before the World Cup. So I really expected him to get the call-up once he got that call-up. But, there's been a lot of off-the-field stuff that's been happening with Toney recently, and I think that may have, affected the decision a bit, because from a footballing sense, the decision doesn't make sense. He's got 9 goals in the last 15 games. Really well, He's been doing really well. Specialist penalty taker as well, and England have had their struggles with that in the past. I was pretty shocked that he didn't take him. Callum Wilson's also a great player, so can't really. You're picking between 2 good players. Tammy Abraham also missed out. There's good players available, but I did expect Toney to win that battle between those 3.
Yeah, I'll agree with that one. I think Toney's a very good footballer. The off-the-field stuff absolutely came into Southgate's mind, because if something would have then happened with that halfway through the World Cup, we would have been stuffed as a country with Kane as our only recognised striker. So I can see why Toney was left out of the squad. Footballing-wise, probably deserves to be in there. Could have been taken instead of Rashford. But again, you look at off-the-pitch stuff. There's been the report that's came out that said Sancho was left out for being late to a team meeting. So, as well as form, but apparently the team meeting came into it. So you look at these things, Southgate does look at them, so I can see why Toney was left out. I haven't put this one in the plan, but I'm interested in it. Do you think Toney would be a good fit for you lot?
See, the thing about Chelsea is we think everyone's a good fit until they come to us and then shit the bed. I'm not sorry, I don't know if I can swear on here.
That's fine, don't worry, mate.
But I definitely do like Toney. There's shades of, Drogba in the way he can hold the ball up, the way he can lead a line. He's not just about holding the ball up, he's got pace as well. He can turn you as well. He's got good technical ability. So he would be a really good signing. It would be very expensive, English to English club, as we know with Chelsea and Leicester. These signings are never cheap, so it would put a lot of pressure on him. So I could, see it being a good signing, but also I could totally see how it would turn into an absolute kind of shit show, as we've seen with plenty of Chelsea strikers. But he's someone who, when there was some links in the summer when Chelsea were looking for a striker, Aubameyang was mentioned, Depay was mentioned, and Toney was mentioned. He was the one who I wanted the most out of the 3, who eventually we got Aubameyang. But yeah, no, I think he could be good. He's definitely a very good player. coming to Chelsea is just a different step up.
Yeah.
He's got like from what I've seen so far, temperament wise, he's got the mentality, especially his journey from like non-league football to where he is now.
Yeah, of course.
It's pretty inspiring, and so he's a likable person as well. So I would take him at Chelsea for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the only tip I would give to whoever hands out the shirt numbers, if he does go to Chelsea, do not give him the number 9. Don't, please, you would kill his career off, and his next move would be to Turkey. Don't give him the number 9 shirt. Right, Manchester City, have they blown their title chances with this loss?
I don't think so. I don't think Arsenal are gonna win the title. Like,
okay.
I know Arsenal fans are on the top of the world right now, and rightly so. They've stuck by their manager. I mean, not all of the fans have stuck by the manager because a lot of them wanted him out. But as a club, what they've done, especially the kind of new era that Chelsea is in, I'm not even embarrassed to say we can look to a club like Arsenal and take inspiration from what they've done structurally.
Yeah.
In terms of how they've backed the manager, they've got a good structure above him, and so Arsenal are really good. But I still think their stages, like their first 11 is capable of winning the league if they play 38 games a season. But football isn't like that.
No.
Like they're gonna have injuries. And when you talk about injuries, like Chelsea have had an awful run with injuries, Liverpool as well.
Yeah.
But Arsenal really haven't had that yet. They've had 1 or 2 players missing a few games, but like not key injuries, long-term injuries, like, a hamstring, like we've had with Conte.
ACLs or things like that.
Yeah, ACLs and things like that. Nothing has been long-term where they've had to like change their style of play. And so I feel, especially with the World Cup, there's definitely, we've seen so many injuries already, but there's going to be more, especially when they come back straight from the World Cup, straight into January and December. And like, it's chaos. And I think they're going to fizzle out towards the end, especially when they get towards the knockout stages of the Europa League as well. Balancing Europe has always been Arsenal's downfall, I think. And they always start well. Like, I think they've been top at Christmas 5 times and failed to win the league.
I saw that stat.
So I still think City are gonna end up winning it because with them we always see like consistency. Like, yes, this was a blip. This is their first loss of the season. But do you expect them to lose like 2 or 3 games in a row? Like, I don't think so. Especially with a fucking robot up front. So I think that this game was just a blip, and Brentford do that. They play really well against top sides, and as a Chelsea fan, like, I know that they've like outplayed us numerous times,
Look
even
at
though
United
we might have
in the season as well.
Yeah. So I think Brentford is just a blip, and City, they barely lose, even if they drop points on draws and stuff. Like, they barely lose, so I think they'll still end up winning it.
I've always said, if this was a normal season, at this point I class Arsenal as favourites because they won't have all those extra games to the World Cup. However, it's not. If someone like Saka were to go and get injured, it would harm them so much. They don't particularly have someone to go out there and replace Saka. You're looking at Reece Nelson, who is nowhere near the same ability of Bukayo. So I like Arsenal. I think they're a good side, but I just don't know if they've got enough. However, you've got January. There's only 2 games when they come back until January. If they can go out and sign a winger, a striker, spend 80 million in January, then who knows? The squad at the moment, I still think City do it, but I'm starting to be a little bit more sold on Arsenal. 5 points is quite a big gap for a side that hasn't dropped many points at all yet this season. I mean, this Arsenal side tore Leicester apart early on in the season, so I've seen them do it, firsthand. They look good. But I still think City might just do it, and it's a title race we've actually got for once, not between Liverpool and City. So I'm excited to see another team actually push City close, because we haven't seen it for ages. So are they going to do what they did last season, Arsenal, and just fizzle out towards the end and not get Champions League? No, they'll still get Champions League, but will they do that with the title? We're going to have to see. What do you guys think? Will they do it? Let me know in the comments below.
I think another really interesting thing you mentioned is January, and January transfer windows are usually weird, in terms of not a lot of big deals happen, but sometimes like towards the end, like a big deal happens. but then this is the first time it's coming after a World Cup, and you always get the World Cup signings.
You do.
So it's just going to be a very interesting window. I think there's going to be a lot of movement.
There's going to be a player come from like Japan or Serbia or somewhere like that that's just going to light the world on fire and move for 60 million in January.
And then you also think, like, there's so many players that stayed at their current clubs because they were like, oh, I don't want to move before a World Cup. I want to make sure I make the World Cup and then I'll, do my big move or whatever. And we might see so many of those where players are like, okay, it's time to move. World Cup's over.
Like what basically the Calvin Phillips move. It's just Phillips did it in the summer rather than do it now. Someone to go and sit on another team's bench, but they didn't do it in the summer because they didn't want to run that risk, which Phillips did and somehow has got into the squad. These are things that are going to end up happening. I mean, you look at a side like Arsenal, if they want to go out and spend 30 million on a right winger, they could easily go and do that in January. It's a title race and I'm so excited for it because it's not just City versus Liverpool and Klopp versus Pep and all of this. It's Pep versus Arteta.
Versus Pep Jr.
Exactly. Pep's given Arsenal his backup assistant and his two really good players just to challenge him for the title. It's incredible, and I'm not believing in the conspiracy theory that he's just wanted some challenge, but it does kind of make sense. Anyway, we'll move on from that, and we'll move on to your side, Chelsea versus Newcastle. Newcastle beat the Blues 1-0 at the weekend, in which was quite a poor performance from Chelsea and all. But we'll touch on Chelsea's poor form later. What do you think of Hall's Premier League debut?
I think he was, I guess, a bright spark in a very boring game from a Chelsea perspective. And not just like his Premier League debut, even his game against Man City in the Carabao Cup. Like, he was up against, some top opposition. Like, he was up against Rico Lewis, like 1v1, but he was cutting into Rodri, into Bernardo Silva, and taking them on, and that's what you get with academy players. They're just fearless, especially from like the Chelsea academy. Like, they always take their chance. Like, they're so versatile. Like, Lewis Hall is a center midfielder. He's not a left wing back or a left back, but because of how versatile Chelsea's academy develops their players, you get these kinds of players who can play in multiple positions and do the job. Like, they're not always going to be like man of the match. Like, obviously you can't expect an 18-year-old to be the man of the match, but he's going to hold his own against Premier League players. And so it was really good to see him get the opportunity. I wish he would have got another game against Dinamo Zagreb, which was just a dead rubber game where we had already qualified. That was also the game Ben Chilwell got injured, so I was calling for him to start that game, and then when he didn't and Chilwell got injured, I was like, this is just awful. Like, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And we talk about Lewis Hall. There's so many other talented Chelsea players who are knocking on the first team door. You saw Omari Hutchinson on the bench, who we signed from Arsenal this summer. He's already got 6 goals and 6 assists for the development team. He's been lighting the PL2 on fire and will probably go on loan in January. He almost went on loan to Reading this summer, but that kind of broke down towards the end, so he stayed with the dev squad. But I think he might get loaned out. But again, we talk about the World Cup, and the World Cup brings another interesting aspect to the Premier League, where now, like taking Chelsea for example, Graham Potter is gonna miss like 12 international players from his squad, while still having players like Aubameyang, Jorginho, Cucurella, like top players who are going to need to stay sharp, stay fit, and it's the academy players that are going to help them stay sharp and stay fit. They're going to be called into first team training. They're going to go to Abu Dhabi with the team for their little mini camp, and they have a real chance to impress Graham Potter, and it's the same for other Premier League clubs across or not just the Premier League, like other clubs in general, where these academy players now have a real good shot, especially in the first few weeks of games after the World Cup, when players who have gone deep into the tournament are getting a little rest. They're not straight back into the lineups. I think those few games, if you can impress your manager, Lewis Hall has already done that. If we can get Omari Hutchinson, Dion Rankin, who is another really talented player, there's so many opportunities, especially in a team like Chelsea where we're like riddled with injuries. there's so many opportunities for the young players, and I'm very excited for that aspect. And
yeah, I mean, I remember a little bit age difference, but I remember when Juice Hall broke through into our first team last year. He just came out of nowhere. He was on loan at Luton, and I watched little bits of him, and I thought he looked really good. He came into the first team, and just like your place, he grasped the opportunity. Played in Europe, did really well, and then from February onwards, after we had that embarrassing loss to Nottingham Forest, which we won't mention, he played every game for like 20, 30 games in a row, and it was like, wow, this guy is really, really good. So academy players, they can just come out of nowhere and come into this first team. Hall looks like an excellent player. If he turns into a left back, it's to be seen. It would surprise me with having both Chilwell and Cucurella there. I mean, I've seen an awful lot of Chilwell over the years. I've seen him grow up from a young boy, and my opinions on him now is probably best if I keep them to myself, because I don't particularly like the bloke. Okay. But he's, I mean, he didn't leave us in the best manner, did he? I mean, I remember it was peak lockdown time, and we'd just got knocked out of the FA Cup by you lot, and he was laughing with Mason Mount right after the whistle, and I'm like, mate, just stop. So yes, I'm not the biggest fan. Cucurella's good though. So I'm interested to see what happens with Hall, and as you say, Hutchinson. I think these could be two excellent players that could maybe help, revitalise this Potter squad, because something's definitely needed. After the 1-0 loss to Newcastle, and looking at Newcastle, they've obviously got their shining light at the moment, Almiron. He won October's Player of the Month. How impressed have you been with his sort of like redemption so far?
It's been great. I'm also biased because I have him on my FPL team, and have done since like I guess the second week of October.
Lucky.
Yeah, it's been so nice. I just picked him up, on a flyer, and him scoring FPL points for me has made me pay attention to him.
Yeah. Where
like every week it's you scored? Oh, you assisted? This is pretty nice. But yeah, no, his resurgence has been really, really good to see. Just that's the beauty of football. You can never write someone off, No. CC Jack Grealish. Players can be, you can think they're absolute shit, and you're like, how the hell is this guy in the Premier League? And they have a purple patch, and they shut you up because they are professionals at the top of their game at the end of the day. And it came at a really interesting time for Newcastle, who they had their new signing Alexander Isak, who was killing it when he was fit. And then he had a bad injury, which coincided with, Callum Wilson's injury, where, for a game or two, Chris Wood started up front, and while Wilson was, nursing his way back. And that's when, we really saw Almiron, grip that opportunity and be like, okay, I'm going to lead this team now. Yeah. And he's done exactly that. And it's like what Newcastle have been doing is, again, very great for someone with new owners, the way that they've gone about their business. There were obviously memes of them signing Mbappe when, the owners first took over, but, they've gone step by step, signing some very good players. And, Almiron's been in the Premier League for a while, and we've seen flashes of, what he can do. But him being surrounded by better players in, Kieran Trippier on that wing, Bruno Guimaraes, like Isak and Wilson.
Joe Linton.
Joe Linton, his resurgence is another whole thing. Yeah, even Joe Willock. It's there's many factors to his resurgence, and one of them definitely is playing with better players. So he can express himself with more freedom. But it's really good to see also just the what we consider, I guess, not a big six team winning awards, because usually you see players nominated but they never win the award because they'll give it to Haaland.
And it was a Newcastle three-peat, wasn't it? Because Howe won it, and then they won the goal of the month, and Almiron won. I mean, I really like Almiron. Have you seen the interview of him actually he did with Sky?
The one that was translated,
yeah, because they bring up Jack Grealish and that, and they go, what do you think of him? and he just kind of laughs it off. You can see the smile on his face when they ask about it. It's clear, obviously, he knows about it, and he said, it hasn't been driving him on, but let's be honest, it definitely has. And he's been doing a Mikel Arteta to himself with that, Arteta did with Tony before the Brentford reverse fixture. He's probably been playing it to himself before every single game, going, I need to prove this guy wrong. But he's excellent, and he's a really nice chap. So, Almiron, keep going, mate. I want to see you do well, because you're actually a nice person. And this Newcastle side could actually get Champions League football and could knock you guys out of it. Bournemouth versus Everton. 3-0 win for Bournemouth in this one. We've got 2 manager questions here, and we'll start with Everton. Is it time for Everton to part ways with Lampard, a manager that you know very, very well after obviously a couple of years at Chelsea?
I definitely don't think it's sack-worthy. Like, what,
Okay.
are they 15th or 17th in the table?
I'll find out for you now, mate.
Yeah, because they didn't have the best start, but they also didn't have like the worst start where they were in a. I don't think
There was a lot of draws.
relegation.
There was a lot of draws.
Yeah, there's a lot of
season.
draws.
They're 17th.
Okay. But yeah, you also have to factor in that their star striker Calvert-Lewin has been just like out injured for like the whole season. Basically, he's played like I think only like 4 or 5 games, and is back out with injury again. So it's been very hard for Lampard to kind of build his team, or like when he hasn't had like a focal point to build it around, because Calvert-Lewin is Everton's best player, like,
for sure,
by far. And when you also think about what the Everton squad was last season, like they deserve to get relegated. Like them not getting relegated was kind of miraculous.
Yeah.
And so inheriting that kind of squad, then losing Richarlison, who is another very big miss, obviously. Losing Richarlison, and like the kind of business they've done is promising. Tarkowski's great defender.
Yeah.
Connor Cody, he's going to the World Cup. He's
Yeah,
a
he
World
is,
Cup
exactly,
caliber. We can debate that on another day, but it is what it is. And those are 2 very good signings, and their defense has looked much better and been less leaky.
Yeah.
Off late, not against Bournemouth, obviously. That was just like awful individual mistakes as well. When you look at the goals, like Pickford for Everton, sometimes just against Chelsea he'll always show up, of course.
Yes.
But sometimes he just makes the weirdest mistakes that kind of make you question, like, how is this guy England's number 1?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the table first of all. Wolves in 20th, they are 11 points behind Brighton in 7th.
Yeah.
Everton in 17th, 7 points off Brighton in 7th, 7 points off your team in 8th. This is a very tight table. If Everton win one game here, they're up to 13th, 14th. Yet, if they lose, they could easily go bottom. It's such, well, not bottom, but second bottom. It's such a tight table at the moment. The performances don't look good, though, and the fans are not happy. I mean, fans throwing players' shirts back onto the pitch, apparently. That's never a good sign, and not something you particularly see much either. I'm interested to see if the Everton board do react in this window, because obviously teams have time now, and some clubs have already acted. You look at Wolves, you look at Southampton. These clubs have already, kind of reacted. You're looking at maybe West Ham could also sack Moyes. Everton could have a chance here to possibly reset. Do I think they will? I think they'll give Frank Lampard more time, but it's a very interesting one. And there's another club who is still looking for a manager, and that's Bournemouth. They still haven't got a permanent manager, and ever since they sacked Parker 3 games into the season. Was it 3, 4? It was very early on in the season.
Bring Marcelo Bielsa back to the Prem.
I was just going to ask you, who do you think they should get in? Do you really think Bielsa's the man?
I honestly don't think so, but I'm here for it.
Yeah.
And another thing with the Bournemouth-Everton game, Bournemouth are having their not new manager bounce, but interim manager bounce.
Yeah.
So that is also another part of that. But yeah, it's interesting what's going on there. Like, you would have thought that they would have given Parker more time, but I guess they were a little impatient. It would be very interesting if Bielsa does come in, because Bielsa likes certain kinds of players, like we've seen that at Leeds, the kind of players they would recruit, like really hard workers and stuff like that. I don't know how he would do coming midway into a season with a squad that he doesn't really, it's not his squad. So it would be a very interesting appointment, which is why I kind of want it to happen, to kind of, more than to see how Bournemouth would do, I want to see how Bielsa would do, because he is such a legendary manager and whatnot. So that would be just interesting, and also Bielsa teams are just really fun to watch. I mean, a lot of goals in them, and Chelsea usually do well against them, so I'll take that.
It's a rough one. There's 2 things within that. First of all, Bournemouth getting a takeover. This is the big thing here. Bournemouth are getting a takeover. That's why they don't have a manager. That's possibly why they sacked Parker so early, because they wanted to still be in a good position to be able to get a lot of good money for them. So they're going to have money to spend in January. The opposite of that is this is Bielsa. This is a man that plays high-tempo football, which tires out the players anyway. These players are already dead. Bringing Bielsa into a side of players who are already really tired to make them even more tired, it doesn't seem to work. It won't work this season, I don't think. In the long run, sure, it could work. But this season, players are already absolutely dead. I don't think it would work. For me, I'm not sure who Bournemouth should get. Do you have any name who you think they should get?
I actually have no idea what kind of like profile they would be looking at, because if like some of the names are like, you know, bring Big Sam back, you know, is what
I back it.
Because, you know, so some of the profiles are like very different to what, you know, like they're not like survival managers. Like you don't get Marcelo Bielsa in for like, you know, if you want to survive a relegation battle. You get him in if you want to build something.
No, I mean there's Gerrard.
Yeah, there's Gerrard, who again, I don't know if you want to get him in for a relegation battle.
It could not work.
He would need time. Yeah, it couldn't work. So it's interesting what kind of direction they take. Again, as you say, with like ownership change and stuff. Like there's so many new owners, and like FSG are trying to sell Liverpool. Like, so much has been going to change in the Premier League. But it's interesting. I have no like shouts for them. But whoever they do bring in, I still think they were probably going to go down this year.
I'll agree with that. Even though they're doing all right in the table, I still think they are going down. And then, before we finish off this part, we touched on FPL. I always like to give people a little bit of an FPL insight, because my year's actually been going all right until last week when I had an absolute stinker and captained Cancelo. Why did you get sent off, you son of a bleep? Yeah. How did your week go? How many points did you get this week?
My bench did very well. I'll say that.
Always the way. It's always the way.
I had Ward on my bench. I had Botman on the bench. So there's an easy 17, 18 points.
Yeah, wow.
But yeah, I got 49 points this week. My captaincy has been awful the last 3 weeks.
Same.
I've been captaining. I captained Foden last week and had vice captain Salah, who bagged 2 goals, and Foden came on for like 30 minutes and did nothing.
Ouch.
Captain Haaland this week did nothing. So my team has been doing well, especially with Almiron. He's been, you know, the big differential, who is probably no longer a differential.
No.
I also like trusted Leicester at the beginning of October to turn it around with their fixtures. So I have Castagna and Ward as my players, but Ward has been like my semi backup keeper. Like I didn't think they would keep a clean sheet this game against West Ham. So I just played Castagna, so you know I could like balance it off. If, you know, if they conceded, I'd be like, okay, yeah, whatever. But yeah, no, it's been pretty good. Like FPL is always fun. My draft, like I do FPL draft with my friends as well. That's been going really, really well.
That's good, yeah.
But how's your team doing?
I've got 56 this week. I had Ward in goal with the 11, which was the big one. I captained Haaland, which I'm still fuming about. I have Maddison in there. For about 3-4 weeks now, I've made sure I need Maddison in there because he's doing well. I've got 3 Leicester lads, and I don't usually back my own team. I've got Ward, Castagna, and Maddison. And Maddison's been picking up points. I've got Almiron. I've got Kane as vice captain, which hurts because if I would have just captained him instead of Haaland, we've got bonus 10 points. 56 points to the game week isn't bad. I'm top 230,000 in the world, 226, 972. So not awful. I mean, I'm top 80,000 in England, so that's all right. I'm doing all right, and at the end of the day, I'm top of the mini leagues I care about, so that's the most important.
That's really all that matters.
Exactly.
Bragging rights.
Exactly, especially when you got money riding on them. You need to win them. But no, yeah, I'm fairly happy with the week this week. 56 points. It's enough to take me into the World Cup. I can now wild card, obviously, because everybody can.
Oh yeah.
And make an arse load of transfers, which is
no price changes as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm really not sure what changes I'm going to make. So I look at someone like an Almiron and I'm like, is now the time to sell him because he's going to come back probably out of form. Ward's only gone up to 4.1 to be fair, but I look at somebody like a Meslier. I've been having Ward and Meslier as sort of like my two rotating goalkeepers, and I'm like, maybe I bring in another goalkeeper there to rotate with Ward to get a good rotation there, so that each one can have sort of like an alright game each week. I've got people like Eze in there who hasn't particularly convinced me. Again, Almiron I could possibly get out. Wilson, maybe it's time for him to go, especially because he'll probably get injured because it's Callum Wilson.
Isaac's going to be back as well.
Yeah, so maybe now's the time for me to get Wilson out. Maybe bring in Ivan Toney for Wilson. I'm really not sure. Could I bring in Toney for Wilson? Is that a change that we're going to make right now? Because let's be honest, if I make it right now, I can kind of undo it. The same price, you know what? Screw it. Right, Ivan Toney, mate, you in for about 2 weeks probably before I change it again. So there we go. I've made a transfer live on the podcast. But yeah, we will round off this segment before we come back to talk about Chelsea. So let's do that. We are back from the break to come back and talk about Chelsea. So, Chelsea FC. How have the summer signings done so far?
I think it's been like a mixed bag. First and foremost, obviously, it's very, very early to be judging. It's been like 2 real months of football. I know the games have been super crammed up. But with injuries and everything, it is a little early to judge. But just listing off them, and I'll just say what I think about them so far. Like starting off with Koulibaly, I think great center back. He's struggled slightly to adjust to the Premier League, which is completely normal. Not everyone is Thiago Silva who can just come in at 38 years old and boss the league. But what did worry me when we did sign him, like the transfer fee was perfect, 30 odd million for, I would say, one of the best defenders in the world, like top 10 at least. But we gave him like a 4-year contract, which worries me because he's 32 now.
31, 32, I think.
Yeah, 31, 32. He would keep him till like he's 35. Again, not everyone is Thiago Silva, so I don't know how he's going to be that good for that long, but he's had good games. In Europe, he's looked a lot better than in the Premier League, which again, understandable. He's more used to that kind of play. So it's still early doors. Given the defensive kind of crisis that we've had, we definitely did need a leader like him. Especially after losing Rudiger, and then when on the flip side, the young signing from Leicester, Wesley Fofana. Again, very hard to judge because he played a few games and now he's out injured. But he did look again okay in those games. Like one of the game against Milan where he got injured, he looked really good. But the other games, he was still adapting to the team. You could see what he could do in terms of breaking the lines and moving with the ball. So positive signs, but again, we haven't seen enough to make a real judgment. But based on the price, the price was a little expensive, but at the same time, when you consider that he had just signed a new contract with Leicester, there was no way we were getting him for any cheaper. So yeah, those two have been okay. Hoping for a lot better from them, and we can see a lot more. Another defensive signing, I guess, Marc Cucurella. Great player. I'm a big fan of him. Again, when price maybe a little too expensive, but when you consider the need in the squad, I think it's worth it, and his age profile as well. Like young, he will be at Chelsea for the next 4 to 5 years. When you consider how important wingbacks are to our system and how lost we look when like Reece James and Ben Chilwell, you need a quality. I'm not going to say a backup, but quality competition to be able to rotate on a weekly basis like Man City do and all the top teams do. So I think he will be really, really good as a signing, and I'm not worried about the price at all. It's also great that he's, now in hindsight, he's worked under Potter, so it's great. But when we signed him, obviously that wasn't the case. I think sometimes with Cucurella, like Chelsea fans have been a little harsh on him. I think he might be because he's played under Potter and is used to playing that like a system that Potter plays. He's one step ahead of his other Chelsea teammates in terms of knowing what to do. But the thing is, his Chelsea teammates aren't on the same page yet. So a lot of times you'll see him do like a give and go, and he's made a different run to what the other player would have expected, and we lose the ball and he's out of position and stuff like that. And so the blame normally goes on, oh, what has Cucurella done? He's out of position. But like when you think about it from the different way, where he's used to his teammates playing a certain way under the manager, and so when you take that into account, it's like you can be less harsh on him. I think he's another player. He had I think appendicitis, and he had to like get an operation, and so he lost like 5 or 6 pounds in like a week.
Wow.
In that, and that is a lot for like a high performance athlete. And then that's when you saw him get hooked at halftime, get hooked before halftime, and so the narrative around him isn't great at the moment among Chelsea fans, but I still think there's a really, really good player there. Very technical, very different to what Ben Chilwell offers in the same position, which would be interesting, and offers quality competition and depth. So I really like him as a signing. Then I guess we have Raheem Sterling, who started off really, really well. Was the top scorer. He still is the top scorer this season, but most of those goals came under Tuchel, where he was the focal point of the system. It hasn't been the same under Potter. We've seen him play in a variety of different positions. Some people would say as a wingback as well, but if you've seen his average position in those games, he's not played as a wingback, which we'll get into the systems and use of players when we kind of talk about Potter, but that's not a fault on Raheem Sterling that he's been asked to do different things. I still think there's a good player in there. We signed him for I think 50 million, which is pretty cheap, in today's market for a player like Sterling. Yeah, and hopefully, I think he's been lacking confidence this whole month, trying to adapt to a new manager and system. But hopefully he regains, the confidence with England, similar to how he did at the Euros, where, he was, I think, England's top scorer at the Euros. Or one of the second highest scorers.
He was one of the best. I think he may have been behind Kane. Yeah, he was up there definitely.
Hopefully he can have that kind of, because Gareth Southgate is going to trust him.
For sure, yeah. He's got his favourites.
Yeah, so he's going to play, and hopefully he can have a positive impact and then come back and hit the ground running at Chelsea. I still think he's a good player for sure. Been disappointing off late, but again, who hasn't at Chelsea? And then Carney Chukwuemeka, good signing according to me. From what we've seen so far, we've seen him play like 2 or 3 games where he's come on as a sub. As for an 18-year-old, like we spoke about Lewis Hall earlier, Chukwuemeka is another player who will be, knocking on Graham Potter's door once he's fit. So he's picked up an injury, which is why he hasn't played, which is a big missed opportunity for him, because these are the games where he would have played a lot. Yeah. And we would have actually got to see him properly. But he will be back when they go to Abu Dhabi for their training camp. So another player who has 40 days with Graham Potter to, impress him even further. Very exciting what he did at Aston Villa. So, you can only hope for the best. Things always don't translate with youth football. But one thing about him is his size, that is very promising. He can play in a Premier League team just given his size. And his stature and stuff. So again, promising from him. Now we can get on to the not promising ones. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who I've said before I would have preferred Tony to come in over him, and especially when the owners knew they were going to sack Tuchel, why sign Aubameyang, who was clearly a Tuchel signing. 33 years old. It is only a 2-year deal, so it's not long term. No. But at the same time, it's baggage that you didn't really need. Started off well under Potter, so although he's a Tuchel signing was out of the window because he was scoring goals for Potter. Yeah. But again, it's hard to judge when all your best players are injured. The connection he had with Reece James was amazing. Reece was assisting him almost every game until he got injured, and after that you have no creativity in the whole side. So it's hard to blame a striker, and call him shit because he hasn't had chances created for him. Yeah. but that signing as a whole, I wasn't really on board with. So I guess we have to see how it pans out at the end of the season and how many goals he's got, because we've only got him for goals. Like he can do all the help us with the build up all he likes, but if he hasn't scored the goals, he's a failure.
He's a failure,
and the number 9 curse continues. And then I guess Dennis Zakaria again. If you're sacking Tuchel, if you're sacking Tuchel and you're gonna sack Tuchel, why sign Dennis Zakaria? So he's been another one who didn't. Again, you said you've forgotten about him, but he just played 2 games.
2 games.
Yeah, he played against City as well, so that made it 2.
Fair enough, yeah.
But he's looked good in those games, which is weird, because he's been a ghost for the whole season so far, but I guess also just been adapting to a new country, and that's never easy. Like, we often forget the human element of all these things. He's going to the World Cup with Switzerland, so that's where we actually get to see him on a regular basis, and hopefully we have a midfield crisis right now, so he will be getting more minutes once he's back. So I guess a lot with a lot of these signings, as you'll see, like it's too early to like actually make a proper judgment. They've had like injuries that have halted their progress. We've had a whole new manager that has halted their progress. So it's hard to judge, but most of them I think are good signings for the long term.
For sure, yeah. And with someone like Zakaria as well, if it doesn't work out, he's a loan, he goes back. It's a low risk, high reward sort of signing. So fair enough. You touched on it there about the managers changing. What did you make of Tuchel's departure at the time he went? And now looking back on it, how do you feel about it?
Well, at the time I was devastated. Like, I have not loved I loved Frank Lampard at Chelsea. Yeah. And I thought he was amazing that first season where he got us top 4 when we had absolutely no right to get top 4.
Oh, no, God, no.
And obviously Lampard, club legend, you have to love him. And when he got sacked, I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to love a Chelsea manager as much as I did Lampard. And then this charismatic German guy comes in, just like happy to be here, happy to be working with these players, like just changes the whole atmosphere at the club, and is just the most likable person. Goes on to win the Champions League, which again, we had no right to win that. Even like we had no right to be that good. I'm not going to say we had no right to win that, because we were the best team in every game that we played, but we had no right to like win that tournament after the squad we had and stuff like that. Completely turns it all around, and is just again the most likable person. He's brought back the the connection with the fans that Lampard had. And I don't think there was a single Chelsea fan at that moment who didn't like Tuchel the person. There was a lot of people who didn't agree with his tactics that were very pragmatic, especially this season, what we've seen, and towards the end of his reign. He's had to deal with situations that no football manager should ever have to deal with,
or ever has, really.
Or ever has, like constant questions about the war, constant questions about things he has no answer to, really.
No.
And kind of the way that he navigated through all of that just makes me respect him so much more as a human. And in an ideal situation, like that structure that Roman Abramovich, where it was just Marina making all the decisions with, Petr Cech, little insight from Petr Cech and the scouting department, was perfect for Tuchel, because he's never been good with dealing with owners. We've seen that at PSG, we've seen that at Dortmund, Mainz. He was just allowed to do the football stuff, which he is one of the best in the world at.
For sure.
And so it was going so well. And after all that he's done, you would think he would get time. But then, like, you asked me what you felt at the time and what you feel now. Now, when I look back, it's like, I know why this happened. It had nothing to do with what was going on the pitch and how poorly we were performing. It was the fact that, in a time where there's been new owners who are changing the organizational structure of the club, he was not willing to cooperate in a in a manner that they thought he would at the beginning, like because they came in to the season being like, yeah, we're gonna back him, and they fully believed that he was the right person because he was collaborating in the beginning, but I guess like he could only do so much, which again it's like it's hard to fault anyone in this situation. It's just two different people from different backgrounds and ideologies, you know. It's hard to put blame on Bowley for sacking Tuchel. It's hard to put blame on Tuchel for not collaborating in a proper manner and stuff like that. Like he's not that kind of person.
No.
And so when he was asked to do a lot of like non-football things or things that were outside of like the training ground, we started to see like some friction between them. And I was actually at the summer tour because they had come to America, and I had, you know, press passes and everything, so I was going to the press conferences, and Tuchel was not a happy man. Like you would think, you know, preseason happy vibes, put on a smile for the fans,
but no.
Like we got battered 4-0 by Arsenal,
and
that like I will never forget that press conference because he literally just threw everyone under the bus, like all the players. I don't know if you've seen this quote from him on Twitter, but it's like, it's the same players, so how can things change?
I remember
things
that.
like that. And you know, he at one point in the preseason, he had like told like people, like he was talking to the players in the dressing room, and he was like, the people that want to stay at Chelsea this season, put your hands up. The people who want to leave, you're free to go. And like there was literally a division in the dressing room of people who wanted to leave, which we had so many, you know. Lukaku was there. Lukaku wasn't there in preseason, but like Timo Werner, Ziyech, Pulisic, a lot of people, Hudson-Odoi, a lot of people who have left, but at the same time, a lot of people who wanted to leave but have been forced to stay at Chelsea. Chalobah was supposed to leave. Like there was literally such a huge division where like half the squad wanted to leave, half wanted to stay. And, you know, there was then favoritism to those who wanted to stay and more attention to them. So it was never going to end well once, you know, the cracks started to appear. And, you know, he's also been going through like a divorce in his personal life. And there's just been so much going on that maybe, you know, it was more that he bit off more than he could chew.
Too much to handle
at that point. And so, so while he, you know, great manager, one of my favorite Chelsea managers, we're going to do the Chelsea manager, you know, list, the tier list, and you'll see how highly I rate him in that. But at the same time, it was time to go, and if Chelsea are to move forward from Abramovich, I think it had to be with a manager that is more, you know, collaborative and like Graham Potter. So that was a pretty long.
That was a monologue, I must say. I mean, Tuchel's a rough one. I mean, also part of this displeasure he had during pre-season, I still wonder if Bowley had kind of gone to him, I don't really want you here. Let's be honest, we all know that Bowley had his eyes on Potter. He had his eyes on Potter for ages, and I'm going to be honest, I think that's why Cucurella went to Chelsea. I think Bowley went to Potter. I want to bring one of your players to Chelsea. Which one do you want me to bring? And I'll get you in a couple of weeks later. It's so strange because Tuchel didn't really do anything wrong. It was a weird time you sacked him. I know you just lost to Salzburg, but nobody really expected him to go then. But Bowley just went, bang, time to go. And he went. So I think Bowley had made up his mind before the season had started yet, then waited until the season started to sack him. The decision was the right one, but it was the timing.
Exactly, the timing. And he had made the decision after pre-season, essentially. Like after the disastrous tour that it was and the kind of like fights that were going on in the dressing room and everything, the decision was made, which is why, you know, you question the signings of Aubameyang and Zakaria. Like, why are you signing those players, especially on deadline day when you know, like at that point you knew he was gone.
So a week later he goes.
The timing element again. It's really like that would be my only slight on Todd Bowley and the ownership. Like they could have planned this a lot better. And executed it a lot better too.
And we're going to get on to Bowley in a second. But before we do, how has Graham Potter done so far this season? We touched on him there. He came in to replace Thomas Tuchel. How's he done?
I think he's only been people forget, honestly, because we played so much football, that he's only been at Chelsea for like 2 months, which is, when you think about it, with no preseason, is like nothing. Like Mad. 2 months is absolutely nothing. But even within those 2 months, you can break his Chelsea career down into two halves, where the first half is when he had all the players fit. We were unbeaten in our first 10 games under Graham Potter. We had smashed AC Milan, champions of England, twice, at home and away. We had gone from bottom of our Champions League group to qualifying with a game in hand, which is something we didn't expect after, the first 2 games. We were doing well in the Premier League. We beat Wolves 3-0, beat Palace 2-1, beat Aston Villa 2-0, and then, Reece goes down. And slowly, all our best players, Fofana goes down, Reece goes down. Conte he hasn't even had a single training session with Conte, because he's just been out. N'Golo Conte anyway is such a huge miss. But then when you also add in, missing, I would say, the best right back in the world, who is also our best player at Chelsea, missing them, then Fofana going out. Koulibaly was injured for 2 weeks. Cucurella had an operation, missed a week. Chilwell then got out. It's just been slowly people have just been falling down. Mendy got injured, Kepa had to come in, then Kepa started doing well, Kepa got injured, Mendy had to come back in.
It's a mess. It's a massive mess. I mean,
it's been insane, and I can't even imagine. It's a mess, and all this while he's still getting to learn about his players, because he's, again, only been there for 2 months. And it's hard to formulate. We saw Tuchel with the same players and they struggled to play. So imagine how hard it must be without the best players of that lot, and still, you don't even know what their best positions are, you don't know what their best attributes are yet. And so it's the last 5 games have been awful, really boring, really bad, no attack whatsoever, no cohesion, no team chemistry, and you can see that this process is going to take time, and Potter hasn't had it. And when you also talk about time, they've been playing a game every 3 days, 3 or 4 days. And so when you consider that, if you play on Sunday, Monday's rest and recovery, so that's, you can't train. Tuesday you train, but then you play on Wednesday, and then you recover Thursday, train on Friday, you play again on Saturday or Sunday. So you're only getting 2 days a week to train with these players. And when you 2 days a week for 2 months is they've barely had a whole month of training, in total number of days. And so when you consider that, you really that's when you kind of understand that, okay, this process is going to take more time than a regular manager change, because of all these factors, injuries, not just the injuries, but fixture congestion, still getting to know your players, still getting to know your club, playing European football for the first time, which is another change. Not for the first time, Champions League football for the first time. He's played in the Europa League before. But these are all changes that he's going to have to get used to, and even the players are getting used to new coaching staff and stuff like that. We talked about Sterling and how he's been asked to do a variety of different things, and the reason for that is obviously the injuries. You're not going to have Sterling play as a pseudo right wing back if Reece James is fit. Same with Pulisic and stuff like that. So there's been formation changes every game. There's been, which is normal with Potter, but formation changes in a way that you wouldn't be having if all the players were fit. You would have more consistency in what you were building and a consistent style of play, which we saw in the first 10 games, but that's been completely abandoned right now because we don't have the players to play that same way. And so it's been very unfortunate for Potter, and I know a lot of Chelsea fans are very, very frustrated and want him out already, which is outrageous to me. But I am really excited. When you talk about Graham Potter, you also have to talk about the people that have come with him from Brighton. So you have Kyle McCauley, who's going to be not heading up our recruitment, but he's going to be basically the Petr Cech role, where
part of the team.
He's going to be because him and Graham Potter have worked together their whole careers. Straight from Osasuna, and so they understand, he understands the kind of player Potter wants, the kind of football he wants to play. and he's going to bring that to the recruitment team. So we've also got Paul Winstanley coming from Brighton, who will be heading up co-head of recruitment, along with another person we're trying to get, Christopher Vivell. This is going more into the ownership part of the conversation, but we're seeing that structure starting to take place, and Potter is going to play a huge role in that, because that was the whole collaboration element that Tuchel was missing, with collaborating with this team for better recruitment, and that way you avoid the Sauls, the Lukakus, and all the failures that we've had over the last few years, because our recruitment was just a shambles. We would just throw money at problems. So this is going to take time, and I really hope Chelsea fans are more patient with him, because I know the owners are going to be patient with him, at least till the end of the season and beyond that as well. I think the Potter out is too premature. But again, another long answer for a question.
And I don't think it's going to be the last either, because I'm moving on. Sure. I'm moving on now to talk about Todd Boehly. How's he done? Very interesting start. I mean, it all started with the interesting tactics from Boehly, going to Tuchel, asking him to play the 4-4-3 formation. Which, I mean, mate, if you want to field no goalkeeper or field 12 players, be my guest. It might not go very well for you though. And he's split opinion with his ideas of all-star games and things like this. But how do you think he's done?
I think when you consider the 4-4-3s and everything, I think he's done really, really, really well. And it's another long answer, because this guy, like, the takeover of Chelsea is the most historic takeover in the history of sport. Like, no takeover first of all, like, it's the most expensive one, 4.25 billion. The most expensive sports franchise in the world. And when you consider that it was done in like 3 months, like, that is absolutely unheard of in terms of sports takeovers. Like, when you think about Newcastle, that took 18 months for them to finalize everything, and that was just Newcastle. That's like a relegation team that these Saudi owners wanted to buy. And the reason it took them so long is because when you do takeovers of this size, you want to do it right, and you want to have the structure in place. And so they got their team in place before they took over. They had like Amanda Stevely, I think her name is.
Amanda Stavely.
They got the head of recruitment from Brighton. I forget what his name is, but they got him
Dan Ashworth,
as well.
that's it.
Dan Ashworth, yeah. They had the team in place to then take over, right? And so that's why they've been able to do it well. But when you only have 3 months with a bidding war among the biggest billionaires in the world, then it completely changes things. You come into an environment like Chelsea was a distressed asset. Let's not forget that they were sanctioned. We couldn't sell tickets. We couldn't open the mega store. So when you come in, football is the last thing you're thinking about at that point. You're thinking about, how do I get this business up and running again? And they did a really good job at that. I think with what they've done with the mega store, the renovations they've had at Stamford Bridge, which are very minimal so far. And we expect them to do a lot more at Stamford Bridge. The ticketing side of things, like, the women's team has sold out their tickets for a second season running. There's a lot more content on the app and the website for not just interviews with first team players, but academy players. A lot more, like, academy games every academy game is like streamed now. Or like, not good. Every game at Kingsmeadow, which is where the academy team play. Every game there is being streamed, and there's change. You've seen a lot of changes behind the scenes, things that you wouldn't really notice until you kind of see them, which they've done really, really well at. And then when you then come onto the football side, like, obviously these guys have no idea about the sport. 4-4-3s don't exist. They don't know that. And that's why they needed, the collaborative approach with the head coach, which was Tuchel. And that's why they were like, okay, which players do you want? And we'll go out and get them. And that's how that kind of relationship started, where it was like, okay, this maybe could work with Tuchel and them. but slowly, that
Didn't.
became more where like the Ronaldo one, for example, where they're asking him, why can't we get Ronaldo? And Tuchel is a football guy, and anyone with a football brain knows that signing Ronaldo doesn't make sense for this Chelsea team.
Not still.
So he's not gonna have, while his team are shit on the training ground, he's not gonna have the patience to sit down and explain to Boli why signing Ronaldo doesn't make sense. Because from his standpoint, I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's where friction started to happen. But at the same time, when you think about what he's done in terms of building contacts, this we've all seen him having dinners and great meal and wonderful food with all these executives, building relationships, not just with executives, with agents, with intermediaries, things like that, establishing contact with Jude Bellingham, for example, Endrick, who's this Brazilian wonder kid.
Yeah, I know about Endrick.
Like when you think about things like that, like it's not like when he took over, people were afraid of what's happening with United and the Glazers, where it's like a non-existent owner. This guy is hyper involved, maybe too involved for
someone that
the
doesn't know
betterment.
about football.
Yeah, exactly. But you can't blame him for not trying. Like he is trying to make this work. Right. And also when I spoke about not having the structure because you only had 3 months, what he is now doing to build that structure has been impressive as well. Like he's trying to recruit the best talent from Brighton, the Red Bull group, which he's a very big fan of because he wants a multi-club model approach at Chelsea. And so we've been hiring people, Joe Shields as well from Southampton. We've hired him, and you can slowly start to see the structure take place. Like this kind of stuff doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long process. It takes time, and when you see it slowly taking place, you kind of understand his vision. Like he doesn't want to be sporting director as much as we want. We don't want that, and he doesn't want that. He wants a department in place so that he can step away from the sporting side and focus on the business side, which is where his expertise is in.
For sure.
And so until we don't have that structure in place, it's like you're gonna see weird signings, you're gonna see weird decisions, which we've seen with Oba and Dennis Zakaria, which we've spoken on. But I think it's going to be different in January, where we don't have the full structure in place, but we have some structure, so it's not Boli doing anything other than the negotiating for players, and it's the structure that is deciding who we should recruit and stuff like that, and not the manager alone, which is another gray area, because if you have a manager doesn't have time to sit and watch everyone. They're not the best heads of recruitment. That's why people have heads of recruitment. And so I think it's slowly been progressing, and what he could have done in 6 months, he's done. Not everything has been great. Again, timing wise, we've spoken about Tuchel and stuff like that. That hasn't been great, but everything else, I think he's done a phenomenal job, from where Chelsea were 6 months ago to where they are now.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on the transfers there. Do you think any business will end up getting done in January?
Yes, because there is a clear need in the squad, for a midfielder and for maybe another wing back.
Okay.
But for an attacker, I think we would have to sell someone to get someone, just because it's already so crowded up there, with people unhappy with their minutes. So it's hard to Pulisic, Ziyech, Broja, Aubameyang, Mount. We have a lot of players. Havertz, yeah. So I can't see us getting an Nkunku or Rafa Leao unless we sell someone. And even then, we're in talks right now with Nkunku for the summer, not for the winter. I can see deals being done in January, but for the summer rather than them coming in January. But that's just for attackers. I think we definitely need a midfielder to come in. Unless Zakaria does really well in the World Cup and stuff like that. Wing back, again, we need depth in defense. So I see some of those coming in. But another thing Boli has done really, really well at is clearing out the garbage. You know,
Yeah.
like the team, like under Abramovich and under Marina, we wouldn't sell Danny Drinkwater. You know, we would loan them, or we would loan them until, you know, their contracts end, and it's a whole cycle where these guys are on your books forever. But he is like no nonsense in that way. He's like, okay, we'll get 25 million for Timo Werner, cool. Like if he's not good enough to play here, we'll just get rid of him rather than, you know, holding out for maybe someone will come in with 30 million.
Do
or whatever.
you think that's partly to do with the loan rules changing as well? Because obviously I can't remember if they've changed now, if they are going to change, but obviously you can't loan out loads of players anymore. You can't keep doing this big model unless they've come from your academy. So loaning out someone like Emerson, say, you can't keep doing this year upon year because you can't loan more than 6 or 7.
Yeah, I think that definitely played into it. But at the same time, Chelsea, when you look at their loan army, which, you know, it's very popularly known as, most of it is academy players.
Okay.
So like most of the time, you know, like that wasn't like the biggest concern, but that obviously is a concern like going forward. And so where we would have usually loaned Kennedy to fucking Palmeiras or something, or we would have loaned Emerson to West Ham instead of selling him. Like we're just cutting our losses on these players, getting rid of them, and, you know, starting afresh. And that's something that we didn't do under Abramovich, which cost us like a huge amount. And so that's another good thing that he's been doing. And so if we see that again in January, where, you know, if Pulisic has a good World Cup, for example, and someone comes in for like 30 million, will he say no? Like, I don't know. Let's see. So
let's see.
A lot up in the air for January. And then we spoke about earlier, like, about how these players just pop up at the World Cup. We've never heard of, and they go for big money. So who knows? We might see some of them.
We definitely might. And then just before we do round off, from this section at least, I had a mate before the season actually started who came out with a very bold prediction saying that Chelsea wouldn't make the top 6 this season. What are your predictions for the rest of the season?
So we're currently set in 8th on 21 points. Tottenham are in 4th on 29 points, but they've played a game extra.
Yeah.
So hoping that we win our game in hand. We're only 5 points off them. So I still think top 4 is like the goal. I'm glad we are out of the Carabao Cup. I hope we lose in the FA Cup early on as well, so we can just focus on the league. Champions League as well. If we can go far, it's okay, but I still see it as a distraction because our only goal this season should be top 4. We certainly have the squad to do it. It's if the squad is fit to do it. For example, like if we, like without Reece James, we're not doing it. Like if Reece James doesn't come back after the World Cup, like that's our season done. And Conte is expected to be back in February, which is a game changer. But again, you don't know how long he's going to be fit for. So there's a lot of injury-prone players that we have that we rely heavily on. If we can keep them fit, I don't see us not getting, like I see us getting top 4, and I don't see us, you know, slipping away because, you know, we've seen what we can do with those players in the team and, you know, beat Milan and stuff like that. So I'm not going to rule out top 4 just yet. And we also don't know who's going to come back injured from the World Cup for other teams, you know. Like we spoke about Saka, maybe if he gets injured. Odegaard has been really important for... Odegaard's not going to the World Cup, but still. He's not going to the World Cup, granted, Gabriel's also not going, but
of course.
Jesus might go. Yeah, he might get injured.
Martinelli again. So there could be injuries basically.
There could be injuries. If Trippier gets injured for Newcastle, that's a huge hole for them. For sure. Harry Kane for Spurs, you know, he gets injured every year. He has like an ankle injury. So, you know, we haven't had his yearly injury yet. And Son hasn't looked good this season. So, you know. And he's been injured anyway, hasn't he? He's picked up an injury. But still going to the World Cup. So, you know. So you have to think if Kane gets injured, like that's Tottenham's goals, like, you know, drying up. And so there's a lot of different factors that it's like this is probably the most unpredictable season, which is making the part after the World Cup so exciting. Like I can't wait for the World Cup to be over. It's not even started, but
I mean, It's going to be mental. I mean, that's been such a breakdown on Chelsea. That's probably going out as video, probably going to be about 40 minutes long. So I hope you've all enjoyed that one. We'll take a shortcut here before we come back to do the tier list of a couple of Chelsea managers. And we are back from a short break to come back and do a tier list of all Chelsea managers. Let's get started with Gus Hiddink. Where would you rank Gus Hiddink? We've got 5 tiers. The special one, very good, solid, meh, and sacked in the morning. Where's Hiddink going to
go? So sacked in the morning is last, and meh is before that?
Meh's 4th.
Meh is 4th, and very good and solid?
Very good 2nd, and then solid 3rd, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to put him in solid.
Okay.
Just because he is the greatest interim manager of all time. Like, he has saved us on 2 different occasions where we've been just crumbling. I remember most recently in the 2015-16 season under Jose Mourinho, where we were in a relegation battle, lost to Leicester, thank you very much. And then in comes Gus Hiddink, the savior, and just, gets us to 10th, which wasn't very great, but we were literally in a relegation battle. So
it was a great season, mate.
He's the savior, Gus Hiddink.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love the bloke. That season, not a very good season for you lot. Best season of my life. Gus Hiddink, the man that was behind the tactics of drawing with Spurs in the Battle of the Bridge to win Leicester City the Premier League title. So yeah, Gus, mate, absolutely love you. You can have my babies, whatever you want. Cheers for winning us the league.
Yeah. Also, even going back even further to Scolari, when Scolari got sacked in 2008. Hiddink came in, won us the FA Cup, so he's pretty good. A
solid manager. Let's go for Rafa Benitez next.
He's sacked in the morning all day long. Okay. Sacked in the morning. It was awful. That season was awful. We won the Europa League under him, but the football we played was awful. He completely benched John Terry for most of the season and said he's too old to play, and the very next season Jose Mourinho comes in, John Terry plays every single game of every single minute of every single game, and in our league win 2 years later. So screw you, Rafa, you almost killed our captain.
There we go then. No nice words for Rafa Benitez. Let's go to Frank Lampard next.
Okay. I really, really love Lampard as a manager. I think his time at Chelsea was sometimes misunderstood in terms of people don't rate it highly enough. That top 4 achievement. When Mourinho said his biggest achievement of his career is coming second with Man United, Lampard's achievement of coming 4th is just as good. With that team, bringing in stars that we have now. Mason Mount came up under him. Reece James, who was actually going to be loaned to Crystal Palace that season until Lampard said, hell no.
I want him.
Yeah, we would have had Zappa Costa running our right wing back right now if it wasn't for Frank Lampard. And, not just those two. He gave so many different players opportunities.
Tomori,
you think of Tomori, Tammy, but even deeper, Mark Gahey made his Chelsea debut under Lampard, killing it at Palace. He's Crystal Palace's captain right now, which is insane. Ian Maatson on loan at Burnley got his debut under him. So what he it was hard to watch at some points where we would concede a lot of goals, 4-0 against Man United and stuff like that. But I would put him in solid with Gus Hiddink just because he did so much. He changed Chelsea for the better, especially after what the season that we had under Maurizio Sarri.
Fair enough. Let's go for Sarri next.
Okay. I'm gonna go meh.
Okay.
For Sarri. I love the guy. Very his interviews. He's as a human being, great guy. I don't mind the smoking or anything. A lot of people just slandered him for being a chain smoker, which is a bit harsh. But we didn't get to see enough of him and enough of him to see his football come to life. Because Sarri ball is a very specific type of football, which the players took a while to adapt to. So that first half of this season was so drab, so boring. I could fall asleep during most of those games. But the second half, we did see us play a lot better, especially that Europa League final against Arsenal. We absolutely battered them. We were playing fluid football, and it was very good to see. But at the same time, we didn't see what happened after that because, he left.
Yeah.
So just because of that, I'm going to put him in meh because, what we did see from him was meh.
Yeah, I mean, for me, he's always going to be remembered for the Kepa instant.
Oh, yeah.
Something that I don't think many Chelsea fans or many
There was a
football
huge
fans
fight
general.
in the Europa League final, the last training session. There was a huge fight with him and David Luiz. So yeah, that wasn't, and he threw his cap on the ground and stormed off training. And this was, how like they live stream training.
Yeah. Wow.
This was during that. So Chelsea fans are watching that like, did our manager just leave like the day before the final?
That's not great.
So that wasn't fun.
No, I can imagine. We'll go for another Italian now, Antonio Conte.
I love Don Conte. He came in, lost a bunch of games, switched to a 3 at the back, won 13 games in a row, went on to win the league.
I remember that.
The following season, didn't get backed in the transfer market, went on to win the FA Cup and dipped.
Yeah, basically.
So I'm going to put him in the very good category because, he is... you can see what he's doing at Spurs as well, even though, Spurs sometimes still do Spursy things. He has done really well with the squad that they have, and they've recruited well this summer as well. And they're a pretty good team now. And Conte is just always going to be very highly rated by Chelsea fans.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, until he moved to Spurs, and then I have a feeling there was...
we still like him.
Do you? Fair enough. I know that there was some love lost for a couple of Chelsea fans.
There was love lost after this game against Spurs. The one where Tuchel and Conte had that little, face-off, FIFA cover kind of thing.
One thing
there was love lost there, but before that it was nice. I still like him.
One thing I will tell you is that when he did actually go to Spurs, one of my Chelsea mates put something on his story, sort of going, Antonio Conte, you're a snake. Antonio Conte viewed it.
That's crazy. He's the last manager to win us a league. So until we don't win another league, we gotta rate him highly.
No, but that's a story I'll tell for quite a while. Yeah, Antonio Conte saw one of my mates call him a snake. Let's move on to your current man now, Graham Potter.
We spent 30 minutes. I think I spoke about Potter. So I am gonna put him in meh now, just because not through his fault, but through circumstances that he's been put into. It's still too early to kind of give him a rating, in my opinion. So meh is the best opinion I have, because I can't really rate him any higher than that.
Fair enough. We'll go for the special one. And is he going to go in the special one tier? Jose Mourinho.
Ooh, he is going to go in the special tier. There we go, then. Just because he transformed Chelsea. Before him, we hadn't won a league in forever. And not just winning a league, he built that dynasty. He got us players and made them he got us players like Drogba, and not just brought them in like how Lampard has brought Havertz and everyone in, but he actually made them what they ended up being. In the future, players like Lampard just went on another level. Joe Cole, that first league win. So I started supporting Chelsea after that season, because my brother's a United fan, and when I picked my team, I was like, I want to go for the underdog, and Chelsea was the underdog at that point. They were the disruptors. We ruined football, as many people say. And what Jose was able to do to, Arsenal had just gone invincible the season before that. We had United were winning the league for fun, and to disrupt that was exactly what we needed at Chelsea at that point, where we were starting to spend a bunch of money and disrupt football in general, and so he was the perfect element of chaos. He was the special one, and his recruitment was great. We signed players who stayed on for years and years, Ricardo Carvalho, Paulo Ferreira, some people forget about the defensive record under him, conceding 15 goals in a season. That's never gonna happen. Chelsea's home record that started under him but went on to 85 or 95 games where we were unbeaten at home. that's another record that might not be beaten again. And he had 2 terms where he came back again and showed us that he can win the league again. So it's hard to put anyone above him. Tuchel was close, but no, Jose has a special place in my heart.
Fair enough. And then you touched on him there. The final manager we have in the tier list is Thomas Tuchel.
He's definitely going on the very good ranking. Just what he did to win the Champions League out of nowhere, like no one expected that. He's won trophies for Chelsea that no other Chelsea manager has, like the Club World Cup. Not the most prestigious trophy, but that's been a hurdle, you know. Yeah, it's a nice one to win. We have the badge that looks really sexy on the pretty shit looking kit. So he was able, and he brought, you know, after Lampard, we thought the feel-good factor had gone. He brought that right back, and, you know, the way he handled the sanctions and stuff is another, like, that counts as a trophy for me.
Yeah.
So I would say, Thomas Tuchel, I miss you, first of all. And you're going straight into very good. If you were very close to, you know, dethroning the special one.
There we go. Not quite, though, for Thomas Tuchel. But that is the end of this tier list. And that's also the end of this podcast, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed every single second of it. We've had a deep dive into Chelsea FC. We've had a bit of a therapy session for you at the same time. Going into all the ins and outs of this club. Before we do round off the podcast, is there anything you'd like to plug?
Just my page, obviously on Instagram, Chelsea FC blogs. Whether it's men's football or women's team or the academy, you know, you'll find news about them all there. So definitely go follow that. I'm also part of the London is Blue podcast. So if you ever need deeper dives into Chelsea and more therapy sessions, if you're a Chelsea fan and need an actual therapy session, check out the London is Blue podcast on all socials, and also on all podcast platforms. And if you're a follower of my page listening to this, definitely give Daniel a follow, because he's doing some great work as well. And it's been really good to be on your show, man.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. It's been an absolute blast, and I'll be sure to get you on again when I'm sure Chelsea sack Potter in a couple of months to bring in somebody new, because that's the way of the Chelsea. But thank you to everyone at home for listening to the podcast this week. Make sure you like and subscribe to the video, and I'll catch you all again probably tomorrow. See ya.